Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, let's do it. So first, so sorry for everyone who came in here immediately and had to watch through that nonsense. I'm very good at this. Don't worry about it. So I'm here talking with Zarathustra's Serpent.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm coming from a philosophy direction, culture criticism. I wrote a couple of books. I just wrote a book about the MCU, actually. Um, and I wanted to have this discussion about trans issues. Uh, because so we'll discuss it, but I think a philosopher has something to say that can help move the discussion forward. Uh, on my channel, I do basically culture stuff, philosophy stuff. Uh, my most popular thing is a series I did on psychedelia, which is called The Story of Psychedelia. Um, the series on Nietzsche, also very popular. So yeah, that kind of stuff.
All right. So the impetus for this video, I know you said you wanted to kind of discuss trans issues with me for a little while now.
Yeah.
But I think what got me interested in it in particular is a recent video that you put out discussing the controversy, the discussion, the issues between J.K. Rowling and ContraPoints. So ContraPoints a
Yeah.
few months ago put out a video on J.K. Rowling to discuss a lot of the takes that J.K. Rowling had over the past summer, her infamous Turf Wars blog post, and so you did a video kind of critiquing both sides of that a little bit. So that's kind of the impetus for this debate, like this the current discussion that we're having right now.
More than a little. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had a lot of points. It was a hour long video. You said a lot of stuff, a lot of which I disagree with, but a lot of the stuff I thought was pretty based and definitely on point. So I have a couple of the points I wanted to bring up and where we disagree, but I also wanted to let you make your case of what did you make of that whole situation regarding ContraPoints and J.K. Rowling.
Well, okay. This is I actually wanted to get to it later in the video because I think this kind of
Oh, that's fine.
this,
We can put that off.
yeah, it's another step because this is where ideology also comes in, on top of the language problem. Uh, I think that a lot of the problems stem from the fact that people misunderstand how language works and basically abuse language on both sides of the debate. So both the transphobes and the trans activists. Um, if we can just clear this up, we can have a much healthier and more productive discussion. Let me give. So I'll talk for a few minutes to give an example. Um, so um, those who are anti-trans claim that if you are born woman, you can't change, or if you are born female, you can't change. Yeah. Now this is wrong, because female and woman are words, and you are not born with words. Words are not part of your biology. If you are born with, let's say, XX chromosomes, um, so you're born an organism, yes, a biological organism. Female and woman are labels that we use to define what you are. So that they're basically a construct. They are something that we and in our language, at least in our logic, arbitrary signs that we use to define you. And now those words are basically categories that they define many. So there are many women and many females, and everyone is different. Every organism is different. So the word is kind of encapsulates a large range of individuals and a large range of organisms. And because of that, there is no clear definition of what that word means. It's basically a collection of many attributes that that define you, and if you have a sufficient amount of these attributes, then you belong to that group that we label as, let's say, woman or female. So if the mistake that those anti-trans are making is, first of all, that they are attributing biological reality to words, and secondly, that they even if not that, they rigidly define words. Like they say that a woman is rigidly defined as someone with XX chromosomes. And no, I mean, and this goes back to basically to the beginning of language. Woman has always meant a lot more than that. We didn't know about chromosomes when we started speaking. So woman is also is biology. It's a biological female, but it's also the behavior, the look, the social roles, all that. And if you have a sufficient amount of that, then you are a woman. So you can transition, and if you start your life behaving as a man, and you can transition to start behaving like a woman, and then you are a woman. Then you and I mean it comes from your nature. You want to behave like a woman, yeah. If you are a trans woman.
Yeah, can I give you a something from that would sound like a scary SJW postmodernist deconstruction of language, but one that I think that you would agree with? So someone once told me that we unnecessarily privilege biology when it comes to certain definitions. So in biology, sex is a very specific definition that would either be gametes or chromosomes, depending on the specific context within biology. But this definition gives us very, very little utility in 99.9% of human interactions, because those things at the microscopic level just are not visible to us, and therefore we are physically incapable of making use of that definition in a social sense. So we have to rely on some other means of definition, some other category of traits, to the point where like chromosomes and gametes, and even to a large extent, unless you live a much more exciting life than I do, even like genitals would never come into our definition of man or woman because it gives us no utility. So we have to rely on things like secondary sex characteristics and presentation, both of which are far more malleable, especially in terms of presentation. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and I hope that even though that seems like a scary postmodern deconstruction, throwing science out the window, would you be amenable to that caveat, or would you be amenable to the point that sometimes biology is overprivileged?
I don't know if it's overprivileged. Let's talk about the word, because okay, let's say woman we define as gender, and sex, the biological sex is female. You can even change your sex, your biological sex, because biological sex is not just the chromosomes. Yeah. So if you start to if you let's say you transition, let's say you have a male body, but you start to transition and you do anatomical surgeries, and you start to take hormonal treatments. Your body starts to function like a female body, mostly like a female body. And if it functions mostly as a female body, I will call you a female. And again, by saying that you are female now, I'm not saying that you are genetically female. You still have XY chromosomes. But yeah, it's not rigidly defined as your chromosomes. Yeah, there's a lot of other things, and if you have mostly other, and the thing is, it's not postmodern, because the scary thing I think that the people are scared of is that they think that if we allow that, then it's like that. So then I can just change the meaning of words in any way I want. But no, like I said before, the word woman meant more from the beginning of language, yeah, the word woman meant more than someone with who is a biological female. There's many more attributes, like social roles and like behavior and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I definitely agree with everything you're saying. I think a large part of the conversation, a large obstacle, is this mischaracterization or misunderstanding of what social construct means, and you could see some of this on both sides. So a
Yeah,
social construct, like you said, all words are social constructs. A social construct is just something that doesn't exist innately in nature. It's something that exists because we agree it exists. I think a lot of people, so I'll talk about the anti-trans side first. A lot of people would think that, oh, because something's a social construct, we're basically saying it's fake. We're basically saying it doesn't matter, when that couldn't be further from the truth. As we said, language is a social construct, and it has an enormous impact on our day-to-day lives. Currency is a social construct. Countries, like nations, are social constructs. These things are enormously important. They're in no way, shape, or form fake. But on the other side, you can take, oh, this is a social construct. You can take that same misunderstanding, but apply it to the exact opposite side. Oh, since
yeah,
woman is a social construct, that means it means whatever I want it to mean. That means whatever I say, whatever my definition is, it's just as valid as anyone else's, because we all just made up words anyway. So it could just mean whatever I want it to mean. So I
exactly.
think there's issues on both sides of that
And language,
misunderstanding.
you don't have that license to use words any way you want, because language is not yours, it's ours.
Yeah. Technically, you have the right to say and believe a word means anything you want, but there is the other side of language. Like, language without a listener is just sound. Like,
Yeah,
the sounds coming out of my mouth only become language if they're interpreted by another person. So yeah, I would agree. Like, I have heard people, trans activists and hardcore lefties in the past, who would make an argument that wouldn't quite meet that straw man of like, oh, words mean whatever we want them to mean, but they say similar things that are similar enough to where I think they could be criticized. Yeah, a language requires a listener, and it requires some agreement between the speaker and the listener. Otherwise, it's not language.
yeah. Now the thing you have to understand with that words have the same word has different meanings depending on the context. So in my video I gave just a few moments of a still from the movie Shakespeare in Love, where the master of rebels comes in to basically arrest everybody because they allowed a woman on stage, and he says that woman is a woman. And now that sounds like a tautology. That sounds like something that cannot possibly be falsified. But it can be falsified, and they actually try to falsify it, and the queen actually in the end falsifies it. Because the word woman, the first woman means means something different from the second woman. The first woman is talking about a female, a biological female. Sorry, no, he's talking about gender. And the second one is talking about sex. So that woman is a woman. That woman, that meaning that this woman who acts and looks like a woman is a biological female. And both uses are correct, and we understand them because we have the ability as humans to understand words in context. Now, why this becomes important is that trans activists today, there are many of them who try to claim that if we don't accept them as women in every context, then we are basically denying that they are women. And the answer is no. If you are a trans woman, there are certain contexts in which you are different from other women. I'll give examples. But by saying that doesn't mean that I don't accept that you are a woman, generally. So, for instance, let's say you are a trans woman, but you don't pass, you look more manly, and you are alone with another woman, in that context, you are not a woman, you are a man. Because when women a woman that you don't know, when women are alone with a man that they don't know, there's a certain amount of fear. And as men, we have to be aware of it. We become aware of it, and we know that we need to behave in a certain way. Now, if you're a trans woman and you, like I said, you want pass, you have to be aware of it, and you have to aware that the other woman, she basically perceives you as a man. So in that context, you're a man, and it's not because that woman is transphobic. It's on a level.
I don't think that that's usually the impetus. I think that most trans people are aware of when they're being perceived a certain way, and they're very cognizant of that. And I don't think that all of them are these screeching like, oh, like the GameStop lady. I don't think everyone's like that, even though like that lady got a lot of abuse undeservedly. But let's take a hypothetical. Let's say that so I'm married to a man, but let's say I go to a certain an adoption agency, and even though I'm legally married, they say, well, you're not actually married because I only like the most important part of marriage is the union between man and woman, and in the most important part of being in marriage is like the unity of masculinity and femininity that provides the environment that is responsible in which to raise a child. So in this instance, even though in this specific context, so I'm married in every other context, in this specific context, this person is saying that, well, no, you're not actually married in the way that counts. So a lot of like the language, the rhetoric surrounding like, oh, you're not a woman in every context is used to discredit the idea that they're a woman at all, because you're not a woman where it really counts.
I agree. Okay, so this is something that we need to work against. But we also have to understand that there are cases when you're different, and in those cases we need to find the solutions that will allow you to will allow basically to basically to have your rights. To be able to do everything that everybody else does. I mean, for instance, there's this Jessica Yaniv in Canada, this activist who wants to who's constantly suing beauty parlors because she wants to get a bikini wax, but she has male genitalia. So they refuse to give her bikini wax. And look, if you want the bikini wax and you have male genitalia, in that context, you are not a woman.
See, I have never met a trans activist who thought Jessica Yaniv's lawsuits had any merit whatsoever. Like, yeah, of course, like she got justified abuse, but she also got unjustified abuse. We won't talk about like the unjustified abuse, but I don't think anybody would say, and I certainly wouldn't. I consider myself a pretty staunch trans activist, that forcing someone to touch a part of any body that they don't want to would be considered transphobic. I don't know if that's a serious case of like. I don't know anybody in broader society, or at least it's not a broad problem, who takes Jessica Yaniv's concerns seriously. It feels most of the time when it's brought up that this is some sort of wedge issue, that we're trying to find the one instance in which our arguments are the strongest. We've tried to seek out a straw man and make that straw man representative of trans people as a whole. Now, I recognize that we can talk about this specific instance. The problem arises when you start to make this specific instance representative of the broader movement and the broader conversation, and it just takes up way too much weight when we're talking about these issues as a whole.
The point I'm making is that the answer to Jessica Yaniv is that if we deny that you are a woman in this context, we do not deny it overall. And
I have a better solution for that. You're absolutely a woman. I don't feel comfortable touching your dick. I don't feel comfortable waxing your balls. I think that's perfectly acceptable. Like what do you call them? What was it? Waxer? Is that the term? Whoever's working at that facility, like, doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to. Like, she doesn't have to touch any sort of like part of the body that she doesn't want to. I think that's perfectly acceptable. And in that case, you don't have to say, well, and I don't want to do it because you're a man. Like, you see, there's an impetus there, right?
Yeah, but then you get to that debate of making wedding cakes to gay people. Yes, so it's the same thing. Well, why should I make a wedding cake if I'm not comfortable making this sort of cake?
It's definitely it's a discussion that believe it or not, I've waffled on that quite a bit, like especially in terms of like artistic expression. Like I kind of side a little bit with the bakers. Now, if they just said, "I'm not going to serve you because you're gay," I think that's pretty open and cut.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like if you are supposed to be making something that you're not comfortable making, I kind of see that. I still think they should be impugned, but not from a legal sense. Like call them bigots, cancel them on social media. I think all of that is fine, but from a legal sense, no, I don't think they violated any sort of civil rights.
Yeah. Okay. So, but anyway, that's the point. The point is, I mean, I made that. I think I did that example before. We
It's
have
a good example, yeah.
we have all. There are cases in which I'm not a man. Okay. So if someone if a thug comes to me and says he wants to have a knife fight with me, and he and his friends start to make fun of me for not wanting to fight and telling me that I'm not a man because of it. Look, they're using the word man correctly because it's part of the attributes of being a man that you need to have courage. You don't chicken out of a knife fight.
I think this harkens back to our toxic masculinity debate a little bit, but
At least in some cultures, and okay, I'm okay. So I'm not a man in that context, and maybe my ego will be bruised for half a day, but it won't mean that I stop being a man because of it. These kind of things. What I'm saying is, language has this flexibility that words have different meanings in different contexts. You belong to a certain group in one context, and you don't belong to it in another context. And you have to understand that if we have a problem with you belonging to a group in that context, it doesn't mean that we are saying that you don't belong to the group overall. I mean, the other issues, women's sports, women's bathroom, all that. Those are discussions that need to take place, and I think we need to remove the whole issue of basically, human rights. It's that we are saying that they are not women if we don't let them.
Well, to go back to my previous example, if I'm married in every context except at the adoption agency, if the people at the adoption agency say, well, you're not really married because of my definition of marriage, and that's the one, in this context, you're not actually married. Well, in this context, it's incredibly important, and it does.
And because of that, if we decided as a society that gay marriage is legal, is the thing that should exist, then gay adoption should also exist, because it's an important part of marriage. If you start to discuss, let's say you talk about advice on pregnancy for a married couple. In that context, you're not talking to a gay to a gay couple.
There's always this push and pull in society of whose discomfort is more valid. So so let's take it out of the trans issue, but let's use an analogy. So let's say that you are a white student in the 1950s, and you're genuinely, from the bottom of your heart, made incredibly uncomfortable by the black students who are now bussed into your class. I think it's fair to point out how uncomfortable that white student is, while also saying, well, no, like your discomfort is not coming from a place that is going to make society better, and so we have to say that your discomfort is not as valid as the discomfort experienced by the abject racism of black people. These two things are not equivalent, and so in this case, we are going to say, like, you can feel bad, you got to suck it up. So, and that's never easy, and it's never that, if you'll excuse the pun, it's never that black and white most of the time. But in this case, I think it's a pretty easy analogy to draw to say that 99.9% of the time, the discomfort people show with trans people is not valid enough to warrant an equivalent spot at the discussion.
Again, like I said, I think that women, let's say the discussion of women bathrooms, women are made uncomfortable from, seeing a man basically enter the public bathroom, and that's a valid point, and there's a discussion to be made, to be had. Um,
There is. It's
which,
just whose voices do we amplify in that discussion?
yeah, and the thing that you know, uh, again, the big problem is that see the difference between me and J.K. Rowling on this. You know, apart from my book sold about 100 copies and hers sold a little bit more, is that for me, uh, I believe that we live in a society, a liberal society that wants to help everyone have rights and be able to live a happy and comfortable life. Um, and sort of, and my worry is that we might get too overzealous with the trans rights and all that, because humans get overzealous. So I want to make sure that we are not getting overzealous when we're talking about trans rights and to the point that we trample over other people.
I,
But
I
JK,
get I get where you're coming from. And this relates back to, I'm not trying to force it back into the video, but it's one of the points I wanted to bring up. I think this relates back to towards the end of your video, you point out, like, don't you realize how lucky you are? And this is an argument that I hear a lot. So it's to me, it's a thought terminating cliche. Like, if you're trans or gay and you live in a Western country, if you live in the United States or Canada, you are going to have a far better life than someone, a trans or gay person who is forced into a society where, like, the punishment for that is death. Like, of course, it's better. The reason I really think that is a very, very dishonest, thought terminating, and not how we should function as a society is that's essentially saying, one, no one's allowed to complain about anything in our society because it's worse other places. So it's just stop complaining is what that sentiment means. And two, it's kind of saying it sucks, but you actually have to put up with more. You actually put up with more abuse. You just kind of have to, and because it doesn't get to the level it does to other places, you're lucky. You're not allowed to complain.
yeah,
I
no,
don't
but
want to trip over that low bar going forward.
that is not the point, and I think that this is a straw man of what a lot of anti-SJWs say, because the point is not don't complain. The point is you are trying to destroy that society that gives you those rights.
I'm really sorry, but you just accused me of having a straw man, and then now you just said that. Well, now you said that actually we want to destroy society. What?
The point I'm making against this kind of social justice basically is that you're trying to overthrow some of the values that are the basis of liberal society. And okay, I think we can get to that later in the video, where I will make that case. But just let me finish what I said about the difference between myself and J.K. Rowling. So I just want to make sure that we are not getting overzealous. J.K. Rowling comes to the whole thing from the lens of radical feminism. So for her, trans, girls who want to transition to be boys, it's because of they are suffering so much under the patriarchy that they want to become boys, to have the privilege of boys, and the whole discussion is about the issue is basically is oppressive towards women. This whole and when you think in that direction, in that way, yeah, I see that as something that just poisons the mind of a woman who is generally compassionate and intelligent and talented and all that, but she comes to really dumb arguments and just not productive and basically hateful, or bigoted. So okay, I think let's get to that later in the video, in the discussion. Another thing that I wanted to point out. A while ago there was this, I think it was a commercial or something, or an ad that talked about people who menstruate. Yeah, don't do this. Um, it's objectifying and unnecessary.
Okay, I got to be honest. I think it takes. I cannot imagine being such a wuss that I was offended by that. But let's try to come to some sort of like middle ground between the two. See, I'm on the exact opposite of that as you. So let's see if we can discuss that and find a middle ground.
So what I'm saying is, uh, women, the word woman can be used for people who menstruate because menstruation is a defining characteristic of women. Now, when we say that something is a defining characteristic of a group, it doesn't mean that all members of that group, menstruate, that they all have it, and it doesn't mean that only the members of that group have it. But if it's statistically significant enough, we can use the word woman, and people are intelligent enough to understand that if you say woman in the context of talking about people who menstruate, you're also talking about trans men, those who menstruate. So this is political correctness gone awry, and
See, I just don't see it that way because people who menstruate, that is like the most targeted perfect example because if you're selling your product to people who menstruate, and that is the perfect definition, people who menstruate. That includes girls as well, so not just adults. So it makes us like recognize that children. Well, do you qualify like a 13, 14-year-old as a child in this context instead of a teenager? Whatever. But yeah, younger people. It encompasses trans and non-binary individuals. So you're just targeting the perfect phrase, like people who menstruate. This includes everyone and leaves no one out of the exact purpose of the product that you're selling.
yeah, but like I said, it's objectifying and
I don't know.
unnecessary.
Can you say what
This
you
is
mean when you say people objectifying? Can you explain what you mean by that?
well, you're talking about people. You are reducing them to one thing.
Well, of
Um,
course, it depends on the context, right? I mean,
yeah,
if we
yeah,
if we
but
a
I'm
tampon
saying
commercial isn't really concerned of what your career is or whether or not like you're it's concerned with the fact that you menstruate. So in this context, this is the pressing factor about them.
yeah, but because it's the context, you can use the word woman. The thing is, you see, what I'm seeing here is, if you go back, the entire modern age was this preoccupied with this idea that if we purify language and if we clean up our language and make every word have an accurate description, have an accurate, be an accurate meaning of the thing that it signifies, we will solve a lot of problems. And this reached its peak kind of in the early 20th century, and then we realized that no, language is a lot more flexible than that, and words have a lot of meanings, like I said, that change in context and all that, and it has to be flexible like that, and because otherwise it won't function. And so if you start to to try to make clear definitions and just go too accurate, uh, it never ends. It never
So
ends because
you're making two different arguments. One that I really agree with. Like I think that if you want to like make the definition of woman more broad and make it known that of course that has exceptions, like trans men menstruate, and just know that you're not left out by us using the word woman. I think there's a case to be made there, and I think I would agree with it. But the argument or the other argument that you were making doesn't follow from that by saying that people who menstruate is dehumanizing, or I'm sorry, you said objectifying. I don't see how those two things follow from one another. Because I agree with the first one. Yeah, women can be very, very encompassing. And in this context, I don't think it's necessarily exclusionary of people who are not women. But the other one, the people who menstruate is objectified, that's where I'm not getting.
I don't think we need to use. We don't need to get to this level of accuracy, and which reduces, which reduces humans, and use the word woman. It's look. I don't think it's a big deal, but I'm saying just don't do this generally. You just don't look to be so accurate, like I said, it never ends. Then okay, a woman who isn't menstruating right now, does it include her? Oh, no, no, we mean someone who menstruated sometime in the last month. Okay, well, pregnant women, they haven't menstruated for months. Oh, no, no, we mean,
I agree. There is a certain endpoint where it gets ridiculous. Like people who are currently menstruating, like yeah, I think
yeah,
that would be a little bit ridiculous. But
yeah,
I just don't know. But even then, it would just be ridiculous
I'm
because
making a
it's too
general,
complicated.
I'm making a general, just point, yeah?
I know, but the general point that I really disagreed with was the objectifying part. If you want to call it ridiculous, I would disagree, but I can see where it's coming from. It's the objectifying part. See, to me, objectifying means dehumanizing, and I don't think the word people could be by any definition
Yeah,
dehumanizing.
okay, right. They didn't say menstruators. If they would have said menstruators, it would have been worse. They say people who, so it's not that bad. But I'm just saying, don't go in that direction. Don't start try to just make these small categories of just accurate and based on one attribute of because it is unnecessary. We understand, if we understand the context, you can use the word woman
Yeah, so let's make the context a little bit broader. So I think I disagree, especially with I've said it again, the objectification part. But what you're saying about like words don't need to encompass every possible person. There are contexts where we can recognize that trans men in this context of menstruation wouldn't necessarily be excluded or invalidated by the term woman. I kind of get that, but in the broader context, and this is an assumption on my part. Keep in mind, I'm a cis dude. For all my audience, I'm a cis dude. So I don't necessarily think that too many trans people or trans activists were like upset at tampon commercials for using the word woman. I don't think that was a big impetus on their part. What I did see was the reaction from people. Like, so most of the people, and I think this is fair. I don't think this is a straw man. When people got upset when they said like people who menstruate, it wasn't because it wasn't a nuanced discussion of philosophy or language or anything like that. It's because it was acknowledging that trans people exist. That's why they were upset. And I don't think it's a straw man. In fact, I think it would be dishonest to say that that's not where most of the impetus was coming from. So most of the pushback you saw from trans activists wasn't in support of the phrase itself. It was pushing back against the pushback. Because the pushback was in large part ridiculous.
Would be, but you give the anti-trans movement more power if you act ridiculous. If you
But again, it's not trans people acting ridiculous. It's
no, yeah, no.
it's
not,
that company.
I'm talking about society. You don't have to do this. It's not, and this is general, not just about trans. Yeah, just don't go in that direction of trying to be so accurate that you just reduce people.
You want to know the ironic part? You know what everyone was talking about for that couple of days where everyone was mad? That tampon company.
Actually wasn't following that discussion.
Well, you know what the big topic on Twitter? It was that company. That company was in the news. That's becoming like a go-to like purposeful marketing tactic now. Like it's the entire. I would bet a large sum of money that that's why Burger King made their "Women Belong in the Kitchen," because they generated the outrage. They got people talking about the company again. So some of that is due to outrage marketing, but also like I still don't think it's a bad idea in and of itself. Like saying people who menstruate, I don't see it as objectifying. It's kind of a non-issue. So I think you were using that to make a larger point about language. So we can go off of that. We have our disagreements, but we can go off of that and move on to more topics.
Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about. Okay, so this gets more now. The whole idea of that trans people are pushing that gender identity is innate. Basically, the way I see gender identity, and I think the way it's traditionally seen, that it's your gender identity is defined by your biological sex and by your gender expression. And if you are trans, that means that you basically feel alienated to your biological sex or your gender expression that you were taught, or to both of them. But there are trans activists who claim that no, that it's a different thing. There's gender identity, which is not necessarily connected to gender expression and biological sex. So you can look like a man, and you can behave like a man, and be comfortable with it, but you're still a woman, because you have that's your gender identity, and like I said, identity, woman is a word. It's not innate. So this whole thing is just nonsensical. This idea that gender identity is innate is nonsensical.
It depends on how you're using the word innate. So, to me, this whole discussion of like nature versus nurture, I think is a false distinction. Like, I don't think there's a meaningful distinction between the two, because what you get if you have nature without nurture, what you actually have is a dead fetus, is a dead baby. That's what nature without nurture would be. So it's like trying to ask, like, if in a discussion, like, which is more important, nature or nurture? It's like asking which is more important in the area of a rectangle, the length or the width. It's nonsensical in and of itself. What I think a lot of people are saying is that, like, maybe if I had been born into a different society with my genetic makeup, I would have turned out differently. But I wasn't, and so, I wasn't. And so it's innate in the sense that I didn't choose where I grew up. I didn't choose any of these scenarios. And so it's, by all intents and purposes, innate, because these weren't arbitrary conscious choices on my part. It was my biology interacting with my environment. Because a lot of people confuse nature versus nurture with choice versus not choice, and those two are just
But when they say that they would have been different, what they mean is that I mean, when if you realize that you have gender dysphoria, you realize it because you feel alienated to either your gender expression or your biological sex, or both, and this this, I think, is just a misunderstanding of language. It's the same thing. It's this idea that words are part of your biology, basically. That I was born a woman, and because of that, I want my brain tells me that I'm a woman, and because of that, I want to behave like a woman. No, you want to behave like a woman. That feels natural to you to behave like a woman, and because of that, you define yourself as a woman. You use the word woman is a label that you use to your the gender identity is a label that you use to define what you feel that you want to be. But the thing that you feel that you want to be is defined by biological sex and gender expression. It's not that your brain is telling you, I want to be a woman.
I feel like there's a little bit of waffling between the importance of the social aspect of language. So let's roll back. I'm sorry I keep going back to the same examples, but I got to go with my own identities. Let's roll back 20 years when we're talking about the gay rights discussion. Now, when we're discussing gay rights, a lot of it was I was born this way. Now, technically, you don't have an innate sexuality in the sense that without socialization, most people would not have a sexuality whatsoever. Like, we don't, we obviously can't study that in any meaningful sense, but based on the research we're able to do, and based on what we know about sexuality, it's very heavily socially influenced in a lot of ways. If you made that nuanced argument, if you start talking about, like, the impetus of, like, does it mean to be sexual? Like, where does that come from? Is it only, like, your genetics would determine it in all circumstances? Would it be the same? If you could have that nuanced argument, but in the broader social zeitgeist, people would be saying, oh, well, I guess since you can change it, since you weren't born that way, you should change it because it's wrong. So you have to be cognizant of how the public is going to interpret most arguments. So the reason trans people are saying I was born this way is because, for all intents and purposes, in all social understanding of what that would mean, they were.
I accept that. I'm just saying it can it can be detrimental to trans people themselves to think that because I have seen it. I have seen, and this is teenagers on Tumblr and all that. But still, this kind of thinking that, oh, I'm comfortable in my male body and I'm comfortable behaving like a man and all that, but I'm a woman. That's and I want you to, and the fact that you don't call me a woman, or all those non-binary identities, that's oppressing me, and they get into all these problems of feeling, that society is not treating them as who they are, because they think that inside they are something else, which is just nonsensical. If you don't have actual dysphoria, yeah, which means that you feel alienated to your to gender or gender expression or biological sex, then it's nonsensical to say that you have a different gender identity.
I guess I'm having a little bit trouble following because it seems like pretty simplistic understanding of like what gender identity is. A lot of it, I mean, it is very different. Like, so there is a valid, in my opinion, distinction between gender identity, gender expression, and sex. I think those are all valid distinctions between each other. Were those the three categories that you kind of said? I'm missing one. Okay.
Yeah.
I think all those things are very valid. Like your gender expression can be different from your gender identity. So I am 100%, again, anecdote, I'm 100% a dude. Very comfortable in that gender identity, but I express myself in a lot of ways that people would consider not manly. Now, because that gender expression is often societally determined. Like, for example, is pink a girl's color or a boy's color?
Yeah. So,
no, that was a real question, not a rhetorical one. Is pink a girl color or a boy color?
Yeah, that's socially constructed in our society. Pink is a girl.
Of course. So you could be 100% comfortable in your gender identity as a boy, but you like the color pink, and you like the color pink, and you recognize that as a gender expression that is feminine, not because of any sort of, just because that's what society has agreed on. Yeah. And so those two things are quite different. And then, of course, sex is the distinct, like, biological components that are usually discussed in very specific contexts.
Yeah. By the way, I was meaning to ask you. You in our last discussion, you claimed that gender is a social construct. Mm-hmm. How do you explain trans people then?
Trans people? Sure. Well, the same way I would explain it, in the same way I describe nature versus nurture. So it's a social construct in the sense that, like, gender is what we agree that it is. And when you're born into a society, because we live in a society, I'm the joker, baby. When we live in a society, you have to adopt identities and means of interacting with that society based on the rules that are already set. So we're trying to find our way in the world, and we're trying to do so based on the tools that we've been given, which is determined by our societies. And so if you were born with a certain genetic makeup, that genetic makeup is going to make you more comfortable or less comfortable with certain identities that you can choose or that are imposed upon you by society. So I don't think in my opinion, that's perfectly logical, and there's no inconsistency, but maybe you found one.
Okay, so I mean, when you say that, let me see if I understand. When you say that something, let's say gender, is a social construct, can be understood in two ways. One is that we are born tabula rasa. There's no, we don't have innate ways to gender expression ways. Yeah, innate expression. Everything is taught to us by society, and society teaches those who are born, male to behave like men, like boys, and those who are born female to behave like in a way that society decided that girls and boys should behave. Now, if that was the theory, then I don't see how transgender people are even possible. The other way to understand it is that we do have ways of gender expression. That means that there are behaviors that, as an individual, I feel more comfortable with, that are more natural to me, and that's something that's innate. It's part of our nature. But we are born into a society that basically imposes a gender binary where it tells boys to behave in a certain way and girls that they should behave in a certain way, which and that's kind of not the situation, because actually if it wasn't for society imposing that, then there would be no statistical differences between males and females in the way that they behave. Yeah, so you have the same amount of let's say aggression on the female side and on the male side and all that. So if I'm understanding, that's where the second one is more, the latter one is more is closer to your position.
So the second one, so the first position was the tabula rasa one, right? The
Yeah.
second one was, no, there's something innate there that is going to manifest. And yeah, I'm definitely closer to the second one. Like, so all of us have certain base desires that we must fill. We are biological beings, and our number one goal from like a biological standpoint is to maintain some sort of homeostasis. So we want to ingest energy to fuel our bodies. We want to avoid pain. We want to. There are certain like primal instincts and primal desires that we're trying to maintain. Every physiological process in your body, including the ones in your brain, are geared towards maintaining homeostasis. The trouble there is that that's going to manifest itself in wildly, incredibly different and variant ways depending on the environment in your that you're placed within. If there's one universal truth about humanity, is that we are enormously adaptable. So the same body can be placed into the jungle 9,000 years ago, or it can be placed into a modern city today and still find ways to function based on the society and the rules of that society around it. So when I say, of course, there are certain, like your genetic makeup influences the amount of a hormone that you're going to produce, is going to influence the connections in your brain, all that. And so that's kind of like the building blocks, but those are going to be wildly different depending on the society of how those things are going to manifest themselves. And of course, there's the huge bimodal distribution of typical traits that we assign to people.
Okay, so you do, because actually, if the latter was true, then 50% of all of what I said was true. Then 50% of all men and 50% of all women should be feeling gender dysphoria right now.
No, that's not in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't follow whatsoever.
If you say that there's no statistical difference between male and female,
Of course I say that.
okay, so you do see a bimodal thing. So there are ways of expression that are more typical of male human, and those that are more typical of females.
Yeah,
So,
and of course that informs our like societal expression of gender.
Yeah.
Of course that informs that.
Okay.
The problem is
Well-
when you're trying to say that means that that you can apply those broad statistics to an individual, and that's a really common fallacy that people have.
Okay. So this is where this is what my claim is, and here's where we start to get to the social justice ideology. My claim is that this is how we see this in our society.
I really apologize. I have to pee so bad. I'm sorry. You have to pause. I'll be really quick.
Then,
Yes, I washed my hands.
yeah. Okay. So So, like we agree, there's a bimodal this thing that there are behaviors that are more typical of men and behavior more typical of women. And yeah, society wants us to conform to these to the most typical. So on top of that, yeah, society creates these norms, yeah, of how a man should behave and how women should behave, and over the years, the centuries, on top of that, we built all sorts of beliefs, and that, let's say, God did not create woman to do this, and so all of that stuff.
Yeah, but yeah. When we say society creates stuff, of course, there's no robed figure that is society that singularly
Yeah,
determines this stuff. It's all an amalgamation of like
yeah,
generalized feelings, where that you get from wherever pocket of society that you're in. Yeah.
yeah, and but in liberal society, in Western liberal society of today, uh, yes, there are norms, but we recognize that there's no rigid definition of what you're a man or what you're a woman. You are free to do whatever you want. People might not like it, but you are free to do whatever you want, and we accept that. There's a broad range. The word man and the word woman both cover a very broad range. Basically, if you have genitalia, let's say male genitalia, you can do whatever you want and still be considered a man, and you can even be considered a woman if you want, if you if you're trans, if you adopt. Um, and the fallacy, what I call the binary fallacy, is I'm seeing that from professors. Uh, Professors are coming and saying, and are teaching that, oh no, we live in a society that is defining things in a binary way, in which you're told that this is a woman and this is a man, and if you are not that, that means that you are not a woman or a man, and it comes in all sorts of ways. I can send you a video that I made, and the and the fallacy, and the next thing that they're saying is that this is a form of oppression. You are being oppressed because you are not you don't fall under this um, you don't fit exactly with the norm. And this is just a lie. This is a fallacy.
All right.
Because
So let's. All right. So I'm going to defend that a little bit. Okay. I'm going to steal on that a little bit and I'm going to defend it based on what you said. So you said that in a liberal society, there are no hard binaries. Like we recognize that women don't have to be a certain way and men don't have to be a certain way, right?
yeah,
Okay. You do recognize that this is not true for a huge percentage of the people who live in Western societies, right? Depending on
what?
what pocket you live in. If you live in like Western societies or liberal societies are not homogenous. There are certainly
Yeah,
pockets within those societies. Like a lot of, good portion of Americans, for example, live in rural conservative societies, in which case, yes, that gender binary is heavily enforced, or at least heavily socially encouraged. Maybe not extraordinarily strictly, but it is still heavily encouraged to the point where you wouldn't call that wouldn't meet your definition. And of course, you have like the liberal cities and urban areas, but even pockets within those areas wouldn't meet that definition. So you wouldn't say that because there are exceptions to this broad categorization that you have of liberal societies, that wouldn't negate it, right? Well, the same is true of that SJW professor. By the way, the kids today are saying woke, not SJW. All right, that's the new hip term for the same thing as woke. So there's like, broadly speaking, it's considered the default in society for a man to be a certain way, the default in society for women to be a certain way. And even if there's no moral weight to moving outside the default in certain respects, depending on how much you do it or what meaningful traits you go outside the default, there's still a form of oppression in the sense that you are seen as doing a moral negative.
yeah. But okay, but that's not. That is not the nature of Western society. Those are uh, uh, groups that live in it, who are more conservative, and what I'm seeing is those professors saying that no, this is what society is. The society is a patriarchy, and we need to overthrow the patriarchy. We need to smash the patriarchy because we are oppressed. And this is what I meant by saying that trying to bring down those values that are, because what I'm seeing, when you talk about whiteness, when you talk about patriarchy, when all those things, all those words, basically what they mean is Western value. Not all of them, I agree. Yeah, some of them kind of have a more accurate definition.
Maybe I'm conflating liberal and Western values with your definitions here, but to me, like smashing those things would be part of Western values or liberal values. Like that would be
No, yeah,
like well within it.
no, but my claim is that when they say patriarchy, what they mean is Western values.
I don't. So I don't think that's fair.
When Antifa says fascism, they mean capitalism. This is, again, not all of them, but I'm hearing it a lot. Yeah, I'm hearing it a lot.
All right, you're going to hear something from me that's similar. Right? You didn't say the word, but I think it fits the spirit. I want to smash heteronormativity.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think I mean when I say I want to smash heteronormativity?
Yeah. Okay. Heteronormativity is just okay. I can get why you want to smash heteronormativity, but when you say I want to smash the heteronormative patriarchy, or as kids today are saying, not kids, it's professors, I want to smash the imperialist, white supremacist, heteronormative, cisnormative, capitalist patriarchy. What you're saying is basically that Western culture is a structure of oppression that you want to smash. That is the meaning.
Well, one, I really don't like it when people get to define what the real meaning behind what someone else says. That makes me super uncomfortable. Like James Lindsay does that all the time, and he's a fucking lunatic. But you seem to be amenable to me saying like, "Hey, I want to smash heteronormativity." You seem to offer some nuance there. Why in that instance, why is me saying I want to smash heteronormativity okay?
Because you're not talking about structure then. You're talking about something, about a norm. You're talking about a norm, and if you
well,
want
norm
to
and structures aren't completely separate, right? Norm and structures aren't completely separable, right? There are structures in place in the broad sense of the word, and those structures are in large part responsible for upholding and perpetuating norms. So in that case, I would want to smash that structure. I'm putting "smash" in quotation marks because I don't want to have that violent connotation.
That the liberal structure is built, like you said, to smash norms. We live in a society that wants to basically become, better, more enlightened, and that means rebelling against norms and creating better norms, constantly creating better norms. What I'm hearing, and the reason it's not a straw man is that I'm hearing, I'm also now as a philosopher, I'm also trained to hear what the meaning is, to get the meaning, and what I'm hearing a lot is this will to basically destroy. It's a lot of it is because they hate capitalism, and but it's this will to destroy. The claim is that the structure of Western society is designed to oppress, and if we want to end oppression, what we need to do is smash Western society.
All right, I'm still getting some conflicting, like liberal society is wanting to smash norms, but if you say you want to smash norms, you want to smash liberal society.
No,
I'm still getting a little bit of conflict there.
Not smash norms, smash the structure.
All right, so what do you think that woke professor? Remember, we're using the new words. What do you think society would look like if they had their way and they successfully smashed the patriarchy? What do you think that would look like?
I think they think that we have it's this old Rousseau thing that the humans are by nature, um, we live peacefully by nature. If it wasn't for the structures who are basically designing them
You're saying that they say that, by the way. That was unclear.
yeah,
You're,
they believe that humans would live peacefully in a natural state, but because society is structured in a way that one class of people oppresses the other, so that kind of twists them and they become violent and all that and bigoted and all that.
I I don't know if they would. That feels like it's such a hardcore straw man because I don't think any. I mean, I certainly don't. I can only speak for myself, but I'm listening to a lot of those same professors, and I agree, and I find myself agreeing with apparently way more of their ideas than you do. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that I tend to really agree with them and identify with them. I don't think any of them would say that humans would be perfect without society. We'd just be these magical unicorns holding hands through the forest, although that would be kind of cool. I don't think any of them are saying that, and I certainly don't think that bigotry is can only come from society. I think there is a certain in-group, out-group propensity that we all have, and you said you agree with that as well. All I'm saying is that is shaped by society. In-groups and out-groups, we say society should have a mitigating influence, but depending on who is in power, you can have benefits from emphasizing those in-groups and out-groups. I mean, the way fascism rises is that defining those out-groups to better establish an in-group to gain more power. If you make people afraid of the out-group so much, they'll support you no matter what. That's one of the big impetuses behind fascism, and why fascism should have a broader applicability to more people that we see in society today, because that's one of the core tenets of it. So I don't think that they and I still want to know, like, what would society look like if their like goals were achieved? I know they believe that humans are just wonderful and we only know conflict thanks to some evil power, but what would the world look like if all these SJW professors wanted what they or got what they wanted?
Huh. It would be worse. Look, the thing is, the attempt is not to violently overthrow the system. It seems that the attempt is to clean our language. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about the attempt to purify language, and this is this whole political correctness and cancel culture. Anyone who speaks in a way that and you see that in the academy, anyone who kind of doesn't use the correct language gets cancelled, and so they believe that if they purify language in a way that gets rid of the bigotry, basically humans will grow into an enlightened language. It will make them it will make society basically a utopia. Now,
would you agree broadly with the concept that if we improve language, we improve society? Just broadly, would you agree with that?
yes, but like I said, language is very flexible, and
of course, yeah, that's why I'm saying very, very broadly. There is a way to. I mean, the whole reason we're having this conversation is that that you want to improve the language that we're using to discuss these issues. So broadly, yeah, and I think they could be coming from the same place, right?
The thing is, like I said before, in the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, when we talked about, and this is philosophers, when we talked about, there was an attempt to create, like I said, a more accurate language that would define things more accurately, and the belief was that this will make society better. When they came to the realization that no, that's not what the language has to be flexible. Every word has needs to have many meanings to be understood in different contexts and all that. Then the role of the philosopher became to purify language from those misconceptions about language. So this idea that we can purify language is now the thing that, as a philosopher, we are supposed to, as philosophers, we are supposed to fight against. We are supposed to explain uh, why this is detrimental, why this. You asked me what it would lead to if they got their way. Uh, it basically creates a language that is that is worse, and ideas that are worse. Because, like I said, first of all, you will never be able to create an accurate language.
So does that mean we shouldn't try? I mean, we'll never learn all there is to know in the universe. Does that mean science is a waste of time?
No, but when you say that our language right now is oppressive, and we need to purify it, it never ends. And because it never ends, language, you will always define language as oppressive, and you will always teach your students that they are being oppressed, and that they need to, cancel people who are speaking wrongly, and all that.
So I'm of two minds. I'm of two minds about that. On one hand, there's definitely a degree of truth to that, to some degree. So I've talked a lot in videos about how like negative traits are diagnostic, and some people are constantly on the lookout for threats to their existence, or just threats in general, and they tend to diagnose people as wholly bad based on one or two comments in a way that I think is unhealthy, unfair, and disrupts discourse. I definitely agree that exists, and I even will grant that I think that's probably more common on the left than it is on the right to a certain extent. But there's also a certain like truth to that. Like, if you are a progressive, if you want to continually improve society, what does it mean to improve to society? If you want to, if that's a, do you agree that that's good? Like, almost in and of itself, if you want to improve society, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way we go about that is figuring out what could be improved, like what's wrong with society, and continually going after that, right?
I think we're doing that in this video, in this discussion. Yeah, the way to improve it, like I said, we can improve the debate by understanding that we are abusing language in some cases, and then we can, once we improve the way we talk about it. We can go on and discuss the certain issues that we have, like women's sports and all that, in a way that is, more constructive. Because I'm sure that there are solutions to all those problems. But the thing is, well, like I said about J.K. Rowling and ContraPoints, instead of talking about the issues, the debate is about who is oppressing who. Is it the systemic systems of systematic sisterhood, or the systemic systems of systematic normativity? What is the? This is not constructive, and see.
If done incorrectly, no matter how good your ideas are, if your rhetoric is bad and if you don't talk about them in a constructive way, of course. Like, although talking about cis heteronormativity, I think in a thoughtful way is very, very constructive, because it highlights what are the norms and defaults that we consider to be, well, norms and defaults in society. And that's worth talking about. Like, there's a lot of data, empirical research to say that white is deemed as normal, as default in America. There's a lot of research to say that white is default. And that if you see someone who is not white, you do not view them as a default American. You view them as like an offshoot of American. That doesn't have to manifest itself in bigotry, but that can help us to explain where a lot of bigotry comes from. Same thing when I want to smash heteronormativity. I'm like, this is something, I know it's an anecdote, but I think it can have broad implications. I'm always a little bit hesitant to bring up my marriage to my husband in broad company if I don't know the people, because that's going to be, even if they're not homophobic, that's still a shock to their system that will make them like a little bit more uncomfortable, not out of any source of prejudice or hate or bigotry, but just because I went against norms that they were expecting. And so,
this is this is human nature. You can't change human nature.
I don't like going back to that's human nature, because of course, like, you can't, like, because what is human nature? It's biology plus environment. If you can change the environment, you can absolutely change human nature.
But human nature is that you are afraid of the different, of the other, of things that you are not familiar with. So the way to change it is to make them more familiar with it. But you will not change the fact that humans are afraid of the different. Yeah. So the way to So if we're talking about trans or gay or whatever, when people become more familiar, they become less bigoted. So the way to solve it is to have, more debate, more discussion, not cancel culture. No, no, because what is cancel culture doing? It's suppressing debate. Yes, it's anyone who speaks wrongly, gets.
Can I ask you what your definition of cancel culture?
It's this. It comes from this idea that we need to purify language. So anyone who is using the wrong terms needs to be deplatformed and that we won't hear from him again.
So do you think so are you aware of the Cardi B and I forgot the other girl who danced at the Grammys and like a very provocative, very sexualized
Yeah.
dance
Yes.
would you say that they were canceled on Twitter? Would that meet your definition? Like they did the wrong thing, so would you say that they were canceled?
Well, I don't think that they were the platform. That they can still do their thing.
But you think they generated a lot of outrage? Like
The general outrage. This is what pop culture does, and this is this is the fun to enrage conservatives.
Oh, definitely. But I probably wouldn't call that canceling either, right? Because you have the outrage, right?
But let's say someone did it who isn't famous, like you said, the girls who behave like that in some society, in conservative places, will get cancelled. Will get all sorts of
Right. It all depends on where the institutional power lies, right? So Cardi B probably wasn't canceled on Twitter because even though there was a ton of outrage generated by her, there was no institutional power to like really take her down, right?
Yes, but this whole thing about power, let's
You see where I was like canceling is outrage plus power?
Yeah, no, but no, because power. The idea here is the woke idea is that there's a group that has power and the group that doesn't. And no, we all have power. Power is dispersed in many ways. And if you have the power to generate a large group of people to attack someone on Twitter, then you have power. Even if Twitter isn't that important, it's still quite people want to be on Twitter. And if you can amass a large amount of people to attack them on Twitter, if it's J.K. Rowling, yeah, who kind of driven out of Twitch, a very powerful woman, but she can't go on Twitter because she's being attacked and it messes with her mental health. So this is all power. This idea that we are powerless and because of that we can behave in any way we want because it's not bigotry. Look, I made this point in the video. Yes, what's this? How come TERFs are the most hateful anti-trans people? The hate comes not from hatred of trans people. They hate them. They hate trans women because they think they are men, because they hate men, and this is the end result of decades of misandry, of man hate that was allowed to fester in feminist circles, and we are the oppressed, so we can hate as much as we want, and this is the result.
I think you're essentializing feminism a lot, like because a lot of feminists are very trans inclusive and have been since the beginning.
No, but I'm talking about TERFs. I'm talking about TERFs, and the TERFs, when you see the hate, they hate, trans people, trans women. They hate trans women, and they hate them because they see them as men, and they hate men. They see them as men who are trying to enter their spaces. Another example on the other side. J.K. Rowling in her blog post said that trans activists are saying the TERFs should be punched. Now, I didn't see it, but evidently she did. Okay, now where does this come from? Where does the idea that they should be punched come from?
Probably from people who are very upset at bigots and want them to be punched. Probably from the same
Oh,
place that
oh,
like
it's
got
kind
probably from the same
it,
place that got really excited when they saw that Nazi getting punched in the street
yes,
when they saw
yes,
Richard
yes.
Stringer
That's
getting
the
punched.
idea that
Probably.
yes, let's punch Nazis. So turfs are not Nazis, but close enough. So let's punch turfs as well. And J.K. Rowling is not a turf exactly, but close enough. So let's punch her as well. And you know, people, kids who read the Harry Potter books. Well, they are basically reading Nazi literature. So let's punch them as well.
Yeah,
This is
well,
how.
let's put things a little bit into a more nuanced perspective. Yeah, you know, you don't want to like paint this entire side as is this the most ridiculous way possible, right? So,
No,
do you think that
what
do you
I'm
think that
saying is,
there's difference? Let's say that you're a trans person, and let's say that you see a random account on Twitter with 20 followers, and they quote tweet you and say, "I was sexually assaulted in the 90s, and I don't think it's bigoted not to be concerned about males in my bathroom." Let's say a random account quotes tweets you, a small trans person, and says that, right?
yeah.
And let's say at the exact same time, somehow, J.K. Rowling says the exact same thing. So she says something very similar to what she says in her manifesto. Do you think those two things are equivalent?
No, J.J. Rowling has more power.
Of course, yeah. So,
Yeah.
like having that power. So I don't know why you were a little bit hesitant to this idea that like institutional like racism is prejudice plus power because
No,
power dictates how much harm can be caused. Like a more innocuous statement can cause a lot more harm if it's coming from a huge
yeah,
person than a directly hateful statement from a nobody.
yeah, but no. What I'm against is that the definition of bigotry is has basically the has been changed into prejudice plus power. So
I don't
so
think I don't think that's bigotry's definition. I think that's racism's definition that some people follow. I don't like
yeah,
that
no, it's
because we already have a term for that. It's called institutional racism or systemic
yeah.
racism.
Yes, systemic racism.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, if I'm black, I can't be racist against white people." There's no such thing as reverse racism. Yes, you can. You
Yeah,
can be
I agree. And
racist.
I agree that's super unhelpful. Because
Yeah,
we already have a term for that, like systemic racism.
yeah,
I think that's very useful because now if you're black, in almost there are very few circumstances in which you can be systemically racist against a white person because individuals really don't do that. But no, so I think I would agree with you there. But there is something to that notion that like prejudice plus power does mean something.
it, it,
It's like depending on
it just means it's worse. It means that
yeah, far it's
it's
far worse
more
in a far
it's more,
grander scale, right?
yeah, it's more harmful. It's a more harmful form of bigotry. And but what the other thing I was saying is that every one of us has power in some ways, and we can have power over someone in some context. So we should always be mindful of that. It's not like I'm against this you know basically Marxist idea of dividing society into two classes of the oppressed and the oppressor. Uh, which is, by the way, when people are saying why are you calling it Marxism? Because of this. This is the thing, and this is the thing that Marxism, social, sociologically, uh, Marxist sociologists, uh, that's the thing, that's the approach that society has two classes, and we find that in this woke ideology.
So
Uh,
you might definitely you probably definitely disagree with this simplistic binary, which awesome rejecting binaries based between like you're either an oppressor or you are oppressed. I think I would disagree with that too. It's like you're either one or the other. But surely there is some validity to the concept that some people have more power than others, and their disproportionate response is a problem in a lot of contexts that should be addressed. So with
yeah.
someone like J.K. Rowling, she okay, we're back.
Right.
I hope so, and I hope it's the same link. Okay, well, let's try to finish properly. What I'll probably do, we were able to stream it live, but since I'll edit out this bit in the middle and upload it as a video. All right. What was the last thing that we were talking about?
You were talking about, I think, Anderson. I never heard of this
All right.
individual.
It's not well. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? So this person
Mm.
had a pretty transphobic book, but not. I wouldn't say it's any more. It's probably a little bit more transphobic than J.K. Rowling's statement. But because he had a lot less institutional power, he had a lot less sway. The public was able to push back and actually enact some sort of like power over him, as opposed to the biggest author in the world who can just say the exact same things and get away with it. It's one of the biggest reasons why Steven Crowder is probably still on YouTube, right? This dude is a bigot. There's no reasonable definition of bigot that he doesn't fall under. He's enormously racist, enormously homophobic, enormously transphobic, enormously bigoted against anybody who isn't a Christian. He should not be on the platform by any stretch of their TOS. However, because he has an immense amount of followers and makes them a lot of money, he gets away with it. So yeah, power is an enormously important
Yeah.
part of
By
this
the way,
conversation.
I disagree with just censoring people. No, I don't think people should be kicked off Amazon or YouTube or anywhere. I think that the debate, uh, the way to move things forward is the debate, and people like Crowder, you know, uh, by debunking them. Look, I debunk anti-Semites, yeah, and
I agree. It shouldn't be as simple as someone says wrong thing, kick them off the platform. There should be some nuance there. I mean, my name is SJW Debates. I debate. I obviously find value in
yeah, yeah.
discussions. I've even debated like straight up Nazis on my channel. So it's not something I'm opposed to. But there should be a little bit of say is there a TOS that you can't go over? Should they be able to kick someone off, not for necessarily having the wrong ideas, but for being like their rhetoric is enormously harmful. They're just abusive. They're only harming the platform. I think the answer is pretty obvious. Yes, right?
No, unless they're doing something illegal. Um, and no, I agree that YouTube is global, so illegal is a bit of a
Yeah,
problem.
it's hard to say.
But
But there should
yeah,
be
but
some level. Like, let's say that a person is making videos on this specific individual, and they're not doing anything illegal, but they're directing as much hate and vitriol toward them. They're making up lies, not anything that would be considered like legally bindable, but they're directing a lot of hate and abuse toward this person. Do you think that there should be some sort of terms of service to like be able to kick this person off? I know this morphed into a different topic, and we can
I
get
think this
back,
could
but
be in court and solved. Um, I mean, look, Alex Jones is a good example. Yes, so. Uh, and okay, he made those videos about Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook, it was. Uh, okay, so we moved those videos. Don't kick him off the platform. The thing is, Alex Jones. There have been people who have been influenced by him to go out and do violence. Uh, but the thing is, we don't know how many people did not go out and do violence because Alex Jones gave expression to the voices in their head. Because you have to be a little bit crazy to start with to take Alex Jones seriously.
I don't think that's a fair defense of like, oh well, the only people who would be influenced by an extremist rhetoric would be people who are already susceptible to it. Well, yeah, that's why you kick those people off the platform to
No,
make sure that the people who are
but
susceptible to it don't hear it, right?
But if you don't give the argument can be made that Alex Jones, they are watching Alex Jones. It gives them some outlet to the voices in their head, and if they don't have that outlet, they will go out and shoot people. And
But then what happens if that just gives like, this is getting into a very very different topic, but
yeah,
what?
so but I make look. I make videos debunking anti-Semites, and there is anti-Semitism in mainstream as well. It's not, it's also of misconceptions and lies which are helpful to anti-Semitism, which are gateway to anti-Semitism,
Of course.
and and and. Uh, and the existence of people on YouTube, and I'm talking about a few years back, you had people on YouTube who were just openly anti-Semite, and because of them, I could make videos then debunking their ideas, and by that also explaining why the mainstream has it wrong. Now, all the videos I made about debunking anti-Semites have been removed. They've been removed. And
I'm not defending YouTube's like current policy in any way, shape, or form. I'm defending the theoretical YouTube that isn't shit.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but I don't know if it can be once you start with the censorship. It's okay. So this is a different discussion.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
There was there are two last points that I wanted to bring up. I know we're like trying to wrap it up, but there are two last points that I want to bring up. One of them is very, very quick. So, are you familiar with the Lisa Lippman study that J.K. Rowling cited in her paper?
I'm not familiar with the study. I just saw it, Lisa Lippman. Look, what I don't know a lot about the trans issue. There's a lot that I can learn. Yeah, I'm still.
Oh yeah,
I'm still.
I'm not gonna like go through and like tell you in detail why this study is bad. I'm just
Yes,
gonna defend like people who are saying that this study is not a valid study, saying what any of the transphobes say it says. There's 100% truth to that. So I have a video on it if you trust me, or you can look at some other sources showing that if you know how to read scientific studies, this source is not doesn't say what they say it says.
I watched your video on Schreier.
Schreier used that study.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, look, I'm open. I know that I don't know a lot about the trans issue.
Oh yeah, that wasn't attacking you specifically. It just seems like something
Yeah.
you weren't familiar with.
So no, I'm saying that I'm there's a lot that I can learn. So this is why when I speak I don't I talk about language, yeah, because this is my field, yeah. I'm just kind of doing a kind of a meta thing of looking at the language that is being spoken in this debate and saying you are misusing language.
Of course.
And
I mean,
yeah.
one of the biggest objections to the Abigail Schreier book and the Lisa Lippman study it was based on was this use of the word contagion, right? I mean, this is an instance where language is very important. If you describe something as a contagion, it's pretty loaded.
Yeah, this is a word that is inflammatory. It's
Yeah, and purposefully so, right?
yeah, yeah. Look, for instance, I changed my mind on women and trans women in sports, which I've learned because of YouTube that it's more complicated because it seemed crazy to me that they would be allowed in sports because the bigger and if they went through puberty as male, but
So, quick plug for my own channel. I'm in the finishing processes of editing a video about trans people in sports. It's the rare instance where this is actually my area of expertise. So mine is exercise science. So
yeah, so no, and no, the counterpoint is that if they take hormones, the muscle mass becomes smaller, and then having bigger bodies is actually a detriment because they can't carry the muscle mass can't carry the big bodies. So yes, so it's more complicated than people think. But again, this is one place where I got into it because there was about a year ago more. What's his name? Essence of Thought. He's a YouTuber. He was making that claim that not allowing women, not allowing trans women in women's sports is a violation.
just
of
for
the human
chat's sake, I'm pretty sure Essence of Thought goes by any and all pronouns. So he is perfectly fine. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and
If I'm wrong about that, it's out of ignorance. Okay.
I remember now that I actually called him she in the video, but then
I think they go
then
by
I
any and
realized-
all pronouns, so it's I
yeah.
think it's
Then I
fine.
realized that it guys is more. Yeah. And he was making the point that denying trans women even if and he was making the point that even if they don't go through hormonal treatment, because right now women. Trans women in sports, they have to, I think they have to take hormonal treatment for 2 years before they're allowed to participate, and also have all the operations. all the surgical, all the anatomical operations. But the thing is, women's sports. When we say women, but we actually mean female, because the women's sports is exclusionary by nature. It's
Not to interrupt
it's
you. Not to interrupt you again. I've been informed that Ethel goes by she/they, so I just want to correct it in the video.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
so
used
we
to,
call her
but
she.
that's been corrected since then. So just want to make sure that was in the video. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
So I really want to have a discussion just on trans sports. But like I said, I'm working on a video about it. This is my area of expertise. I have 70 academic studies cited in this, on top of all the ones that I'm going to be responding to. So it's a hugely complicated issue that there is a ton of nuance into it, and I think it deserves the empirical data behind it to have informed decisions. But the current conversation is absolutely loaded of this is the... So when transphobes, and I say transphobes very broadly, when they attack this issue, they think this is the easiest one to attack, that they're going to get the most public support behind, and that's why they're focusing on it. Not because the issue itself is that important, just because that is the symbol of, well, here, you see how crazy the trans rights activists are? They're trying to... This is why they're attacking it, because they think it's the easiest. But, yeah, I think the last thing I wanted... Again, I really want to discuss this, but I want to wait until I make a video on it, so I don't ambush somebody with like my area of expertise. The only last thing I wanted to talk to you about that I think was, and you can, if you're ready to go, like if you're ready for it to be over, you can say so. Are you okay to
Yeah,
keep going
no,
for a little bit longer?
yeah, I'm starting to get tired, but we can do one more topic.
All right, one more time. Let's say 10 minutes. All right, so one of
Yeah.
the things you said in your video towards the end, and it's something that's, not just because it was in your video, it seems to be something you believe, is that like bigot. So you took issue with Natalie saying that bigot/racist/turf is a slur, or that rather that they aren't slurs. You seem to take issue with that, and you
Yeah.
kind of took the, and I don't want to be putting words in your mouth, but you kind of took the issue that like being called a bigot does suck, like to the extent that like it could be as bad as being like actually discriminated against by like someone who calling you like a racial slur. Don't let
Yeah,
me
not
mischaracterize you.
discriminated against, not discriminated against, but it's worse than being called a racist slur. It's a lot worse.
It can be a lot worse for the individual person, but that gets back to the like, I mean, if someone calls me the F slur, I'm like, depending on the context, I might laugh it off because that's just, it has no power. In
Yeah.
some contexts, there are certain contexts where that will be the most terrifying thing I could possibly hear. But if someone calls me racist, it's that hurts me, that hurts my feelings because it's something that I genuinely care about, and I don't want it. Feels like it's attacking my character in a way that like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to admit that I've made a mistake, so I'm going to be defensive about it. But you can see how like essentially what they're doing is they're saying you're wrong. So if you say you're wrong, could you interpret that as a slur? That's essentially what you're saying. They're not attacking your identity as a person. They're attacking your
No.
opinions and saying that the opinions are incorrect.
No. So what you should say is, this opinion of yours is a racist opinion.
Right?
Not you are a racist. This is a racist opinion. And so and then educate, and educate that person why this is racist. And if they insist on, even after being educated, on holding that, if they hold on to that opinion, then you can start, suspecting them of racism. But just because someone has a prejudiced opinion, and let's say just an ignorant opinion, which is
Yeah,
a
for what
racist.
it's worth, I completely agree with you, and I think this is a huge problem that a lot of progressives and leftists have. I think it's a huge problem. Now, I say that thinking that like bigot's a slur. I think those are ridiculous. Of course, they're not slurs, but I absolutely agree with you when you say that. Yeah, it's not helpful to diagnose a person based on this one opinion. If they say something wrong, it's really unhelpful and it can be very damaging to that person because we do care about people, to diagnose them as a person for something dumb they said. Like, no one wants to be diagnosed or defined by the worst thing we've ever done. Of course not. And saying something insensitive on Twitter, I don't think meets the threshold of this thing defines your life. It's not like murder. Like, you murder someone, that could be the most important thing you've ever done, and it's okay to diagnose you about that. But saying something dumb on Twitter, or even something or even saying something very racist, I think there's room to grow from that, and that doesn't have to define you. You have to look at other factors. No, I definitely agree with that. I definitely think that at first we need to talk about those ideas, like, hey, this opinion of yours is racist. Here's why, without impugning on someone's moral character. Not only because it's nicer, but also because it's more effective. No one wants to
Yeah.
defend their character, but they're a lot more open to defending their ideas. I absolutely agree with you there. I just don't see this. I'm going to default to like the institutional power. Like there's nothing I can say that is going to have as much impact. If I like insult straight people and what's a slur for straight people? Breeders. There's no way that is ever going to have as much weight as a homophobic slur going the other way. Maybe on a person to person level, like that person might actually like feel minimized, but when we're talking like broad societal levels, and remember what is considered a slur is societally determined. There's no way those two things will ever like compare.
Yeah, but like I said, when you allow it, then you get eventually turfs using words that they use for men, they're now using for trans women.
Yeah.
So,
No, I would definitely agree with that. Like the misandry, like the biological essentialism displayed by a lot of like turfs, I think is just as damaging on no matter where it comes from. I would definitely agree with you there. I don't think it's diagnostic of all feminism, and I think that it had its use in some aspects. I do think it was more defensible when women were second-class citizens, and it was expected that women couldn't hold any place in society. There's a certain catharsis of lashing out and rejecting these societal norms that have oppressed you, but I agree that it can definitely go too far and be destructive, and this means of catharsis for you, that's you can talk about that. You just can't pretend that it's a meaningful way to advocate for your positions within a society.
yeah, look, you go back to 2015, there was quite a
Excuse me.
bit of history against men online, and most feminists are not, and haters are not misandrist, but it was seen as kind of funny and cool and all that to be misandrist, to say bad things about men, and now it's turned against trans, and now all those feminists are cancelled.
Do you know the stereotype of the millennial, where we're given everything for our entire lives, everything's catered to us, our emotional needs are put first and foremost. Like we think that we should succeed at everything, and then the very first time we get out into the real world and actually have to try about something, we completely give up.
Yeah.
There's something to that. That feels like the conversation about like misandry online. Like you've never experienced any sort of oppression, so the very first time something hints at it, it is devastating towards you. Now, for what it's worth, on a person to person level, I don't think it's cool to invalidate, like, if you actually feel legitimate suffering because of like this immutable trait that's being maligned and you're being judged by this immutable trait about you. I don't think it's cool to like say that your suffering doesn't matter, or that you're not allowed to feel bad, or you're not allowed to feel like worthless because of things that have been said about you online based on stuff that you can't control. On an individual level, I think that's shitty to do. But on the other hand, when you frame discussions to put equal weight on misandry and misogyny from a societal sense, I don't think I think it's kind of, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think it's pretty disingenuous on a broad scale to say that misandry is as much of a problem as misogyny in the broader society, or even just on the internet. Maybe in specific spaces on the internet, but it depends on what context you're looking at.
Just saying that they're both wrong.
Of course, they're
Uh,
both wrong. It's just which one is more meaningful.
no, okay, so one is more harmful, but both are wrong, and both should be criticized and not allowed. And no, because
Oh,
the thing
absolutely. Like, would
the
you,
thing that I'm
if you
criticizing,
were having a panel on men's
yeah, the
issues?
thing that I'm criticizing is that SJWs are telling me, oh no, I can't be reverse racist or reverse and all that, and that's why kind of shield themselves from criticism in that manner.
Oh, definitely.
Um,
That form of identity politics, my opinion has more is better. My opinion on something that is not my own experiences is better because I have this opinion. I think that's pretty toxic. I don't think that's and that's not going to further conversations in the future. It is kind of a defense mechanism. I think it's infantilizing to say that people of marginalized communities are they they can't have flaws, or they can't do dumb things that everyone does. That they're always perfect angels, and I don't think that's something anyone genuinely holds, but Yeah, there's a sentiment I can agree with there. But let's say you were having a panel on men's issues, and it was a very legitimate panel talking about like how men kind of get screwed in custody battles, how toxic masculinity actually does hurt men, like this notion that you're a failure if you're not the biggest provider in your house, or if you don't have a big job or something like that, like stuff like that. And then a feminist came in and said, "Well, well, what about women?" We would recognize that in that context, the discussion was you're just trying to do a whataboutism to avoid talking about these issues. So sometimes it feels like when people are talking about like for example in BLM, there's nothing wrong with saying all lives matter. Nothing wrong with that sentiment whatsoever. What is wrong is pretending that was the sentiment being expressed when someone says all lives matter. People are saying all lives matter not because they legitimately think all lives matter, but because it was a disruptive whataboutism to get focus away from Black Lives Matter. That's what that was for. And any framing otherwise is simply incorrect.
Yeah, but the counterpoint to that would be that when you say Black Lives Matter, you're basically implying that people are racist and think that Black lives don't matter.
Sure. Yeah, and the statistics kind of point to that being somewhat the case. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's hyperbolic. I'll give you that. It's hyperbolic, but causes have to be hyperbolic. But the underlying impetus behind that black people are disproportionately, I want to say the word, black people are disproportionately oppressed in most aspects of society, not due to individual like people being incredibly racist, but just due to the systemic inertia that we get from like all these broad historical institutions, and that they're put in worse situations, and that whole thing is one of the reasons why they're in the position that they're in. To take all of that and say, well, what about white people? I'm poor. I'm white. You're saying I don't matter? Like, no, we're focusing on this issue. It would be just as worse if we were talking about like Appalachian poverty. Appalachia is a part in the United States that's almost entirely white, and it's very poor. If we were talking about Appalachian poverty, and then a black person walked in like, well, what about black people over in the inner city? Yeah, like this cause is about this. Like you discuss that somewhere else. Because that's why I think any like all lives matter was completely disingenuous, because it was never a real call to talk about those issues. It was only a whataboutism to draw people away from the issues that we were trying to talk about, which in the case of Black Lives Matter was systemic racism and police and like over policing of black communities. I know that is incredibly off topic, but if that energized you and you're ready to keep going, I can go for a little bit longer, or we can start wrapping it up. It's up to you.
No, let's wrap it up because it's getting late here, and like I said, debating in English is exhausting for me. So.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you putting up with me talking extremely fast, which I'm sure wasn't super fun to like listen to, and probably made things more exhausting. And I apologize for like my tech difficulties, but for what it's worth, I think it was a really good discussion. I think I think it was productive. I hope anybody listening to this thinks it was productive, even if you vehemently disagree with either of us. I hope that there's some sort of, there's some expectation of good faith. So when I see in the comments, what I would like to see, if you're one of my fans, try to engage in good faith, try to bolster positions, and try not to immediately dismiss somebody. Because I can say, like, I've talked to genuinely horrendous people who hate trans people, who do not deserve to be taken seriously and do not deserve your time or effort. I don't consider Zarathustra here to be one of them. So I hope you give that good faith to him and further dialogue and actually help change people's minds that might be amenable to it.
Right.
All right. Well, cool. Well, like I said, thank you for any last words? Any last words? I shouldn't have phrased it that way.
No, I think it was productive. I think we talked about the things I want to talk about. I hope really people think about what I said and what we all said, and just take, try to improve the discussion, because there is a discussion to be had, and there are good, most people do want to help trans people, to help and to help and anyone else who is involved in this. They want to find the solutions, and assume good faith. So that most parties have good faith.
Assume good faith within reason, yeah.
Yeah, but also that a lot of parties, have prejudices. One has prejudices, and also that a lot of people. This whole discussion is, since it's new, it's we don't really people. It's not their fault that they don't understand it.
And remember, as lefties, we understand systems and how important they are for people, and how like growing up in a bad system that's influenced you in a lot of ways doesn't necessarily impugn your character as a person, and we can change those systems to help make life better for everybody. The internet is not always real life. Don't let the horrendous discourse that you see on the internet, where people are not people to each other, they're just walls of texts. Don't let that influence how you talk to people interpersonally and like face to face. So,
Yeah,
all right, I think we'll end it there if that's okay.
yeah.
Cool. I'll say, well, Zara, I am so sorry I can never say your name correctly. Zarathustra, it was good talking to you. Good to see you again, and I hope you have a good rest of your night, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
You too.
Take care. All right. I like for all the things that I think that he has pretty yikesy takes on. Like for what it's worth, I think he's. I would not call him a bigot in the sense that most people use it. I think he's a good dude. I enjoyed that conversation, and I think if we had more conversations like that, I know that sounds like, oh, if we had more conversations with that, like that, everything would be better. But I sincerely do think that that's a better way with people like him. That's a better way to go about things. Like if I think that if I had treated him like an abject piece of shit transphobe who hated trans people because he didn't have the correct opinion right away, I think that would have been a way worse because, there are people who are reachable. And as an advocate, you have to be willing to talk to people who don't already immediately agree with everything you're saying. And if your immediate response is to just dehumanize them and say that you're already a bigot, I already hate you because you already don't think exactly like me, is incredibly unhelpful. And I get that it's exhausting to put up with all this shit online. I get that activism is incredibly exhausting. But the best thing to do when you're exhausted by activism is to give it a rest for the day. You're only hurting your mental health if you're constantly seeking threats that all you're doing to that is like adding fuel to the fire. Like it's okay, take that step back. You'll be more effective, you'll do more good if you can allow yourself the energy to engage with people who deserve it. So, all right. Um Yeah, I suck at streaming. I suck at talking with chat, and I apologize about for that. If this ends up as two streams on YouTube when everything's said and done, if they split it up because I had a little internet blip there, I'll probably cut them both together as a single video and upload that with the middle bit where everything's confused with that removed. But okay, all right, everyone. I think that's it for me. Thank y'all for showing up. Cool. Yeah. I guess I'm gonna end the stream now. So y'all take it easy.